India has lost more money in 6 months of 2023 from internet suspensions than it did in the whole of 2022. This according to data from global tracker Top 10 VPN. In 2023, India lost $255 million by June, which is this year. It had lost $184 million in the whole year in 2022. Now, these shutdowns came during exams in Rajasthan, a statewide police search of Amritpal Singh in Punjab, and a still ongoing riot protest in Manipur. In Manipur specifically, the ban has been extended till June of 20. This comes amid ethnic violence that started on 3rd of May and is still ongoing in various places. Internet has been shut down in state for a month and a half now. Now, while internet shutdown hammers economy, hurts daily life, work and employment, sometimes they become necessary, according to governments and state, to control mayhem, rioting and protest. Joining us at this point in time to talk about internet shutdowns in India, their economic cost, is Krishnesh who's a lawyer. Also joining us at this point in time is Nikhil, who is the founder of MediaNama. With me in the studio is my colleague Kartikeya Sharma. Gentlemen, appreciate you all taking time out. I want to specifically go to Manipur first before we go to the economic cost of these internet shutdowns. Kartikeya, you've been tracking all the developments in Manipur. You know, there is a debate here as to when are internet shutdowns necessary. In case like Manipur, when there's violence and there's an extended violence now for a month and a half, internet shutdowns becomes inevitable. Are you in support of such a move in order to contain situation, or do you feel work and life can go on as usual and internet should be allowed to freely be, should be allowed, should not be contained, should not be blocked, and people should be allowed to make life work as usual?
See, internet is banned in those areas where law and order becomes an issue. So Kashmir is one example that internet is interrupted, shut down, or the speed is reduced, or from 4G it becomes 2G, or they won't allow you to send videos but only stills. You can message but not talk on WhatsApp, things like that. So they do it in a staggered way. But there's been a complete internet shutdown in Manipur. Issue is that earlier internet was about communication, entertainment, but now in data is not about entertainment and communication. It is also about basic services. So you create hindrance, and courts have also observed on the internet issue. For example, payment, shopping, shipment, transfer of funds, you affect all that. So you affect daily life. So I think the use of shutting down of internet as a tool to contain insurgency or to maintain law and order should be intermittent or should be used very judiciously, and it should be lifted. To say that if to ban internet in a place for 40 days, imagine how many things you do with your mobile phone. When was the last time you went to the Vodafone shop? Or when was the last time you went to the Bijli Ghar? Or when was the last time you had to stand in a queue? You had so many services in Delhi that even one vegetable can be delivered. So I think internet shutdown should not be looked only from the perspective of an economy. Internet shutdown is also about rights. Your basic lifestyle gets disrupted with internet shutdown.
Absolutely.
You can't even get a taxi these days. You don't have those taxi stands. You don't have those 1980s sort of, every colony with a taxi stand at the corner. No, you don't have that. Now everything is on the data. So Manipur is a striking example that the governments of the day will need to come out with better ways to ensure law and order, to ensure that the insurgency is controlled, because despite internet shutdown, do you feel that the insurgency in Manipur has gone down? Or the terror activities have been reduced, or the resolve of the Pakistan is down? No, it's same. It's done differently. So I think internet shutdown affects civilians more than anyone.
Okay.
The perpetrators of violence will devise any other way.
Okay.
You'll just make their life slightly tough, but they will have their way. They'll have wireless. They will use human couriers. But for civilians, it becomes a problem. And Manipur is
Needless to say that.
Manipur is an example of
Okay, needless to say, it becomes difficult for civilians. People who want to perpetrate violence will find a way or the other. Nikhil, Pahwa, I want to come to you, and the reason I'm asking this question is because according to an Internet Freedom Foundation report, internet shutdowns in India are often unwarranted, unaccounted for. They're of course coming down heavily on India, making sure that the first step it takes is cut down access to internet. It is a debatable point of view. However, what my colleague here essentially saying is there are other ways to work around it, and shutting internet only hurts people, the common man.
No, I completely agree with that point. If you look, the thing is that India has got a history of, for many years, 100 internet shutdowns in a single year. Can you imagine little less than 1/3 of the year the internet being shut down? Darjeeling, for example, about 3-4 years ago, had the internet shut down for 100 days consecutively. Can you imagine life like this? So what happens to us today is that the internet gets shut down in cities apart from Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, right? And the question that we have to ask is why? Every single internet shutdown is a suspension of our fundamental rights. It's an indication that the state is unable to protect our fundamental rights. It's a failure of the state. So if the government of India and our governance machinery overall is shutting the internet down for 100 days in the year, it's a colossal failure of governance for 100 days for 100 instances in a year. You know what happens? Students aren't able to apply for colleges. In Darjeeling, you had students who had to go to the border of Sikkim, climb up on a hill because they were getting a geo signal from across the border. That's the kind of impact it has on lives. Doctors quite often get consulted on WhatsApp. That doesn't work. And I would disagree. I think a 2G, even if the speed is shut down, is reduced to 2G. Have you used 2G in areas where the internet doesn't work properly and you get edge? Nothing works. So it's the equivalent of a shutdown when that happens. One last thing I wanted to say was that there have been multiple instances each year, whether in Gurgaon, in Rajasthan, in Gujarat, where the internet is shut down because of some exams. I mean, how ridiculous it is that for a few students who are going to take an exam just to prevent them from cheating, you're basically taking an entire area out of and shutting down the internet for them. I think we need more accountability from the government here. It's a complete failure of governance when the internet gets shut down.
Before I bring in Krishnesh, interesting, Kartikeya, you want to prevent few people from cheating. You want to ensure that students don't cheat. The first thing that comes to your mind, instead of putting in proper provisions in place, people who can invigilate what you do, is you cut down internet. So that's the end of it, and as a result of which people suffer. I remember some of my colleagues who were working in Punjab at this point in time, or who were working in various places where internet was shut down temporarily by the government as the first resort to clamp down on mayhem. They could not work. They could not access internet. As a result, they could not travel from one place to another. So as you pointed out, it's not just an economic issue, it's a human rights issue.
Internet is not only a human rights issue. See, you want to create a sense of normalcy. If you want to create a sense of normalcy, would you deny a population the most basic requisite? If you want to create a sense of ordinariness, then you need to ensure that there is order in the street, there is water available, there is food, and there is data. Data is not an esoteric thing. People think that data is an esoteric thing. It's like medieval times, you deny water and food to village, people will fall in line. They think that if you deny data, it will hinder movement of ideas, it will hinder coordinated attack against the state. But there are other ways. Do you think there is internet in Dandakaranya? Do you think there is a lot of internet in Chhattisgarh? But still you have those Naxalite attacks on our forces. Are they using data? No, they were not using data even in 60s and 70s. They were using wireless. They were using different things. Or when insurgency started in Kashmir, was there data? Or did it start because, or were they able to control it by reducing the data? No. I think everything requires political dialogue. Internet is an enabler. So to say that if you deny people the services, they will talk. Internet services have been denied, not VOP. People can still make calls. Our journalism is now dependent on phone calls. I don't get people on my show on a Zoom call. They come on their mobile phones, landline. I plaster a photo of theirs and then we speak, and then we talk, then I make graphics out of their statements.
Okay.
So the message is there. So if you ban internet, what do you achieve ultimately? Ultimately, you are just depriving a person, apart from video getting viral or photos being sent or passions being aflame. There is nothing more than that you do, because you disrupt the person's service. So my point is that, arbitrary ban of internet should not happen. And the more you use an internet ban to bring a situation, it's like an ultimate tool. You have a problem on Aurangzeb in Maharashtra, there's an internet ban. You have a problem in some district, if internet ban. Do an internet ban, but revoke it. But you can't have an internet ban for 45 days.
Makes sense.
Are we going to say that we're going to have an internet ban in a state like Manipur for 6 months?
It's been a month and a half already.
45 days.
Exactly.
So how can you do that?
Okay. Okay, absolutely. I mean, people continue to suffer, even if a few fringe elements are currently violently engaged with one another. It's the general population, the general people who are sitting in homes, they continue to suffer. Krishnesh, I want to understand this from a legal point of view. In 2020, Supreme Court has said that internet shutdowns should not be frequent and there should be guidelines in place. Since then, we've seen at least 8 internet suspensions in Arunachal, followed by Maharashtra, West Bengal, Punjab, Rajasthan. So it looks like to me the guidelines have not been set in place and the order has not been complied with.
Absolutely. Supreme Court's judgment has not been followed at all. I think one thing with respect to Manipur, it's important to be noted that Supreme Court said that internet shutdowns cannot be indefinite. But this Manipur shutdown has continued for almost 45 days now. Beyond that, Supreme Court also said that you should publish internet shutdown orders, but several states continue to not publish them or even provide copies of the orders in response to RTI requests. As you correctly said, Supreme Court in 2020 said that impose internet shutdowns only when it is unavoidable. Now, what has happened in Rajasthan or in West Bengal, internet shutdowns are being imposed to prevent cheating in exams, as the other panelists also said. And that's absolute violation of Supreme Court's judgment in Anuradha Basin. And this is why several people have now approached the Supreme Court seeking compliance with the decision in Anuradha Basin because states are not following it. I just want to add that in terms of impact, as a recent report by Internet Freedom Foundation and Human Rights Watch discusses, the impact is much broader than was previously discussed. Because of Aadhaar, because of Digital India, a lot of basic rights can only be accessed if internet is available. You can get ration only when your identity is authenticated using a device which uses mobile SIM. When internet is suspended, people are not able to get ration in Rajasthan. Their attendance is not registered under Manrega and they're not getting wages. So a range of problems which affect your basic socioeconomic rights accrue because of internet shutdowns.
All right, so socio-economic rights there, not just that you cannot access internet, so you cannot watch movies, you cannot be on YouTube, you cannot watch reels, but essentially, as Krishnesh pointed out, the more we are trying to go digital, the more we are linking our Aadhaar card to various facilities, including ration card, including access to basic facilities like a Digi Locker if I'm not carrying my driving license. All of that is made possible, and the government, of course, trying to bring more and more people into the Digital India initiative. All of that comes to a halt and a grinding halt the moment internet shutdown is put in place. What essentially can happen at this point in time to send out a clear message? Because while you have Internet Freedom Foundation coming up with that report, that's not enough. We continue to see economic downfalls of internet shutdowns.
See, I'll give you a specific example of Manipur. Like in Manipur, Manipur is the doorway to the East Asia policy. Now, there's a Kaladan project which would connect Manipur to the Southeast Asian countries. Now, Kaladan project requires internet connectivity. If you want Manipur's More border to be gateway to Southeast Asia, do you think it's possible without internet? Is that movement possible without connectivity? So, if you want to integrate regions, first of all, we have to understand today physical integration has to be accompanied by a digital integration. both digital and physical integrations have become important. This is not 1950s or 60s where, you know, there is a physical connect in the sense of a road and a petrol pump and the restaurants on the road. Those days are over of maps and other things. There's a digital connectivity, you know, digital passes, digital papers, you know, digital orders, digital shipments. So if you are talking about connecting regions, it has to be about connecting world through the internet. And I think there has to be a way in which economic activity can function with law and order action by the state or the central government. You need to find a way.
You know, I have to say this, and I'm not a spokesperson for the government, but there is a sense here and merit here to the argument. Let's also bring in Nikhil into the conversation. Nikhil, there is merit here to the argument that if you're trying to contain mayhem, a riot-like situation, today a WhatsApp message broadcasted to a large audience will allow them to mobilize really very quickly and hence spread the message. The moment you block WhatsApp, the moment you block access to any of these sites which can easily disseminate your information, it is made easier for you to contain law and order situation. There was some merit to that argument.
I don't think there is. You know, you're talking about shooting the messenger. So what happens is that if people aren't held liable for the message that they have sent, or if the police isn't able to maintain law and order, why should my fundamental rights to free speech be subservient to the failure of the police to do their job? If people are going to get caught, they're going to get prosecuted, if the law and order machinery is going to function, people will think twice before rioting. I mean, frankly, a riot is not an act of nature. It's not a storm that human beings have no control over. So the failure of our police, the lack of police capacity in our country, is leading to a situation where you're trying other mechanisms like shutting the internet down. When was the last time that there was a riot that people were prosecuted and held accountable for their actions quickly? And so if there is, you know, evidence that people get prosecuted, other people will think twice. If mobs are not allowed to, if you can impose section 144 in a place where you say that mobs aren't allowed to collect together and then prosecute those who do. Instead, you're doing that and shutting the internet down. What happens in that situation when there's some child who was in school or in college and their parents aren't able to connect with them? You know, because the mobile also gets, mobile phones quite often also get blocked at this period of time. So across state, you know, people have families living across the country. They want to find out how their families are doing. There is no information. Let's say someone needs medical help. How will they be able to contact, let's say, a hospital or book an appointment with a hospital in a different part of the country?
Okay.
If they have to book flight tickets, everything is digital. So essentially what you're saying is life is going to come to a stop because the police can't maintain law and order. And because of the police inability, they don't get held accountable for their inability to do their job, but other people have to suffer.
Okay.
I mean, how ridiculous is this? Your digital payments will not work, your bookings will not work, you can't stay in touch with friends and family friends. They feel so vulnerable at this point in time. Even your real estate transactions, and I mean, we did interviews with brokers, etc. in Kashmir when there were like 6 months of internet shutdowns at a stretch. Look at the frequency in which the internet has been shut down at a stretch in Jammu and Kashmir, right? That entire state is, I mean, so many actions in that state are paralyzed. So this is an issue of disproportionality. For addressing the problems of a few, you're punishing everybody.
Okay.
And that cannot be allowed to happen. And this is not a new issue. We've been raising this issue for the last 8 years. For years, India has topped the charts for the number of internet shutdowns in the world. How shameful is it? At one level, you're going across the globe during the G20s talking about digital public infrastructure, but your digital public infrastructure can't function when there's an internet shutdown.
Okay.
It is utterly shameful that you just want to do a PR campaign about digital public infrastructure, but you don't want to take the necessary steps to ensure that it remains active for everyone all the time.
Okay, Mr. Pahwa, I understand your sentiments here, and it does feel like you're depriving common masses of their right to internet, and in essence depriving them of food, pay, work, all in toto, making their lives harder and harder. Before I wrap this up, I want to quickly get in Krishnesh once. And Krishnesh, you know, Internet Freedom Foundation published a report saying that internet shutdowns in India are often unwarranted and unaccounted. How do you define those terms?
Unwarranted because Section 5(2) of the Telegraph Act requires a public emergency or a threat to public safety before you can impose a shutdown. But oftentimes, as we discussed before, shutdowns are imposed when these circumstances simply do not exist. Cheating is one example which we've already mentioned, or just to quell protests. If protests are not or do not have the possibility of leading to violence, there is absolutely no legal justification for suspending internet services.
Okay.
Beyond that, accounting for internet shutdowns is also important. The government does not maintain any database of how often they suspend internet services. They also do not publish orders, as I mentioned earlier. The only sources you have are independent sources who are tabulating internet shutdown orders or instances of internet shutdown on a weekly basis, such as the one maintained by SFLC. Now, because of this, lot of shutdowns simply go unaccounted for. Internet is suspended, people are affected, but around the country, we do not know what's happening. In fact, the Parliament Standing Committee has asked the government to account for internet shutdowns which happen across the country. But the government has not done this. It's been more than a year since the Parliamentary Standing Committee released its report. So several shutdowns continue to go unaccounted. The numbers which are on the screen right now are probably lesser than what the actual number is.
All right. So unaccounted internet shutdowns and internet shutdowns that cannot be justified, of course, continue to prevail. India becoming the third economy in the world to take the worst possible economic hit for shutting down internet very, very frequently. Krishnesh, Nikhil, thanks very much for joining with your inputs on that very important story.